We're back with a news alert on NVIDIA. Christina Partsenevelos has that for us. What do we know?
Well, Scott, last Friday, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang was spotted dining at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. Following their conversation, NPR is now reporting the Trump administration is reconsidering plans to not ban NVIDIA's H20 AI chips to China. These are specialized chips that have been under regulatory scrutiny for months, with a lot of concerns that they were going to get banned, creating uncertainty with a lot of analysts. This also explains why many Chinese cloud service providers have been aggressively placing orders in anticipation of these potential restrictions. This situation does present a challenge for NVIDIA because you have tech giants like Alibaba rushing to spend billions of dollars and specifically H20 chips during the first quarter alone, essentially stockpiling inventory before any restrictions. And so what we're hearing today is that those restrictions are not going to come anytime soon. This is according to NPR. NVIDIA is declining to comment. Keep in mind, though, this front running will help earnings for NVIDIA. The problem is it sustainable? And if the United States is not going to ban these chips, China can still ban these chips, right? Because Huawei is stepping up with their game in the chip world as well.
Some of these stock moves, Brad, are just extraordinary, double take like moves, clearly. NVIDIA, for example, is up near 17%. You told me the other day that you were buying more on the most extreme weakness of that stock. For people who listen to you about these names, what are you doing today on this news? What would you advise people to do now with some of these largest stocks in this market?
Yeah, I mean, listen, moves like this are debilitating, Scott, and I don't love this volatility. You know, I know on Monday and Tuesday that Schwab and Robinhood, they were having record volumes because retail investors, folks like my siblings, my nieces and nephews back in Indiana, they get worried. They can't afford to lose 20 or 30% in their retirement accounts. So they do the worst thing, right? They're forced to sell on days like that because the fear is going through the roof. They got to prevent further losses. That's hugely unfortunate. So this is a Main Street problem when you have this level of volatility. But as I look at it today, I'll just throw out a framework. Go back to April 2nd. And look at what the prices were of these companies on April 2nd before we had these announcements. And even with these massive moves today, most of these stocks and indexes are still trading below the level they were trading at on April 2nd. And I would argue that now we're in a much better position because we know the flight path forward. And so, yes, NVIDIA is our largest position. We bought a lot more on the bottom. But listen, we were nervous like everybody else in the market. This was a really important step forward, but we got to see follow through. I expect we will see follow through in terms of these negotiations. And I'm hopeful. And the big win here is that we get to the negotiating table with China, we get a deal done with China, we extend the tax cuts, and we continue down the path of DOGE and deregulation. If we get all these things, the market and the economy can look very different 5 or 6 months from now. It's rare in my 25 years of doing this, do you have such negative views and such concern juxtaposed right next to this potential positive outlook for the economy, but it's where we are. And the president, like you said, you can love or hate the tactics, but he's the negotiator in chief. And today is an important day in terms of setting us on a path that I think is durable for the economy.
AMD up 24%, Micron up 19%, Broadcom 19%. Forget about NVIDIA, which is up 19%. Semis had gotten destroyed. There was a belief that what was first in, so to speak, could be first out. Does this take a longer-term relief off of that space?
I think it does. There were two sectors, industry groups, and in fact, semiconductors were the ones that flashed for us Monday. So that would be Friday's data. For the first time in a long, long time, really since 2022, our option frenzy work was showing a seller's frenzy in semiconductors. Now, believe me, it's not good enough to call it by the day or by even the week, but generally you're in the zone that you know that things have gotten bad. It was also happening for home builders and apparel names. So Nike was actually one that was on our list as well. So, from that standpoint, what it says to us is it was really a full repudiation combination of the AI, blue skies, can see a million miles in front of you type of thinking and narrative that was out there just, 6-9 months ago, and you reverse that. And for us, one of the keys, when we're going to look for a bottom is you have to be able to take out kind of those blue sky narratives of whatever it was, whether that was, switching, and today it's AI, whatever it was throughout the ages. And we were able to do that. And that really just happened last week. So that to us was an important milestone to say, hey, now they're taking out the narratives of what was really, really bullish. And that's a good setup. Are they going to be leaders? I don't think that they're leaders. I think they're massive rallies. I think they're part of that beta trade. They're probably exhibit A for that beta trade. But there's more to go there in our view.
Because even if we just had this whamma jamma short squeeze, there were some things that really were going awry, and those things matter. We got to address them. First, 3 weeks ago, we were at NVIDIA's big trade show, and we heard one of the greatest stories of all time, the build out of data centers that are needed in order to handle all of this artificial intelligence functionality. Now, though, 20 days later, there's a belief that the data center El Morte is dead, because Microsoft has shaded down some demand for some of the latest and greatest NVIDIA chips, and now there's really no reason to own NVIDIA, they tell us. In fact, until around 1 p.m. today, the prevailing belief was that the most risk-free trade, besides shorting Apple, of course, was betting against NVIDIA. As for CEO Jensen Huang, he was terrific, but you know what they say? He's had his day in the sun. To me, NVIDIA now has a chance to change the narrative. Yesterday, Adam Jonas, the James Joyce of analysts, don't laugh, that guy holds up, penned a piece about robots. I happen to have introduced myself to one of the robots when I was at GTC. He was one of those real hail fellow, well-met kinds of characters, kind of foppish, clubby. You remember them in college. We're talking about someone who can clear the table, do the dishes, sweep the floor, wipe the spills with total aplomb, a total marriage saver at that. This robot is a magnet for NVIDIA chips. So if Microsoft doesn't want its chips, I believe that 1X Robotics, the robot's parents, will take as many as it can get. If 1X is going to manufacture these things at scale, it'll need to have as many of NVIDIA's chips that Microsoft will give it. Jensen told me I can expect to be able to rent one of these robots real soon because I can't make good hospital corners. And if I leave so much as a spoon on the table, it's grounds for divorce more quickly than when I poke fun of my wife's Baconator obsession. I hope Microsoft saves my marriage by giving 1X all the chips it needs. Please, Satya, please. The gating factor for these robots, not enough NVIDIA chips. Yesterday, I signed up for Perplexity, adding to my collection of Grok, which I love, ChatGPT Pro, Gemini, take that Google search, Meta AI, and Claude. Now, that's a lot of bots, a lot of competition. And you know what I say? Whoever has the largest number of NVIDIA chips wins. I hope Microsoft will let these other companies get the chips they need. I spent a lot of time with CoreWeave in the last few weeks, and, you may not like their debt. You may like their Jersey attitude. Give me a break. I love them. But the seriousness with which they're building out the data centers, it's real. What's their biggest gating factor? Again, not enough NVIDIA chips. So yes, Microsoft's wavering. Ever since the Chinese unveiled DeepSeek, NVIDIA's been in a rut. True, Jensen met with President Trump last week, and the president agreed that NVIDIA can keep shipping their NVIDIA Lite chips to China. Nobody even noticed. So many obituaries. Who can see from underneath them? But what matters more than anything else is that despite Wall Street's near universal belief that NVIDIA's best days are now behind it, despite the largest hedge fund selling it hand over fist, as long as NVIDIA's chips are sold out as far as the eye can see, yet its stock sells at 25 times this year's earnings, I want to be a buyer. You can't go from being king 3 weeks ago to pawn this morning. Maybe in reality, NVIDIA's just a rook, but I'll pay 25 times for rook's earnings any day of the week.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. Today was a fantastic day in the markets with the S&P finishing the day more than 9.5% higher, and NVIDIA finishing the day a whopping 18.7% higher. This morning, the president posted saying, this is a great time to buy. And then early this afternoon, the president posted again, saying that he is raising the tariff on China to 125% while also implementing a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for over 75 countries that have not retaliated against the U.S. This sent markets absolutely flying higher. At the high today, the S&P was up 10%. Remember that the average yearly return on the S&P is 10%. And we had that big a move in just one day. Today was insane. Okay, so recently I've been saying that I was not optimistic about stocks, given that there were so many unanswered questions regarding the tariff and macroeconomic situation. But after the news we got today, I feel much better about stocks overall. We are not completely out of the woods yet, as we still have the trade situation with China, and there's still some tariffs in place. But at the same time, I feel much better about stocks looking ahead over the next couple of months considering today's news. Now let's talk about NVIDIA. We got multiple pieces of news today. First, NPR published a story saying that Jensen Huang attended a dinner with the president this past Friday, and that the U.S. is now reversing their previous plans of implementing export controls on NVIDIA's H20 chips to China. Now, I do want to caution you all by saying that the sources cited in this article are unnamed. NPR claims that the two individuals are not authorized to speak publicly on the matter. I'm always wary of reports that rely on unnamed sources, but I'm bringing this to your attention just in case so that you're aware of it. China accounts for about 13% of NVIDIA sales, and so if NVIDIA is allowed to continue selling H20s to Chinese companies, that would be a very positive development. Also today, NVIDIA announced a partnership with Google Cloud to bring AI to the world's regulated industries and countries. This means that if an enterprise or country is not able to go to the cloud due to security or confidentiality reasons, NVIDIA and Google Cloud will bring AI to them on their premises. This is a big deal. As I've said before, I am bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA. At the same time, we have some short-term headwinds that we need to be aware of. First, we have yet to hear any news about the AI diffusion rule and export controls being relaxed. That rule was proposed by the Biden administration before leaving office, and it is set to go into effect in May unless something changes before then. The AI diffusion rule would limit the amount of GPUs that NVIDIA is allowed to sell to certain countries. And so, at the moment, that is a potential risk in the short term. If we get news in the days ahead of that rule being relaxed or eliminated then, that would be very good news for NVIDIA. We are also approaching hyperscaler earnings, and this earnings season will be very important to NVIDIA. All eyes will be on the hyperscalers' CapEx guidance. We did get news today that Microsoft is slowing or pausing some early-stage data center projects. I want to mention a couple things on this topic. First, this news broke today before we got the announcement of a pause on tariffs, and so that is worth bearing in mind. And secondly, we have to remember that Microsoft told us about this on their most recent earnings call. Over the past few years, Microsoft had to spend a lot of money up front on the construction of data centers because they were so far behind on physical infrastructure. They had to spend a lot of money on things like land construction, utilities, etc. And now, as many of those projects come online, Microsoft will shift their mix of CapEx, spend away from the external costs of the data center, and shift that CapEx to, quote, short-lived assets inside the data center, such as CPUs and GPUs. This is what Microsoft CFO told us on Microsoft's most recent earnings call. And so now we need to see what Microsoft says on their earnings call, which we should get sometime within a month. The last time we heard from Microsoft on this topic, they said they were still going to spend $80 billion on CapEx, even as stories about data center slowdowns were spreading online. And now we have to wait and see if that is still the case. If the hyperscalers maintain or even raise their CapEx guidance, then that would be very good news for NVIDIA. On the other hand, if the hyperscalers issue lower CapEx guidance due to tariff risks, then that would be a negative short-term catalyst for NVIDIA stock. We will have to see what happens, and this will be a very important earnings season for NVIDIA. While I don't know what will happen in the short term, I'm still bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, and I think this company still has a lot of room to grow. At least that's my view of the situation. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.